Good evening to everyone present here. Welcome to the scholarship evening. The Queen Mary Bar Society is proud to introduce our panel for today. So our first panelist for today is Alexi Norris. Uh, Alexi Norris is the president of the Bar Society. Uh, just a second, I'm sorry. So Alexi has gotten the Queen Mother Scholar from the Middle Temple. Uh, Welcome, Alexi. We are proud to have you here. Our second panelist for today is Anne-Marie Debrah. So Anne-Marie has the Princess Royal Scholar from Inner Temple. Welcome, Anne-Marie. Our third panelist for the day is Sam Clare. Sam has the William Charnley Scholar from Gray's Inn. Welcome, Sam. Our fourth panelist for today is Kendal Watkinson. Kendal has the Sir Thomas More Scholar at Lincolnsen. I think we're still waiting for Kendal. Uh, our final panelist for the day is Beth Williams. She's an outreach coordinator from Lincolnsen. We're very happy to have you here, Beth. Welcome. Before I hand over to Claudia, I just wanted to ask all the panelists if they're comfortable with us recording this event.
That's fine by me.
All right. So I take that as a yes, and I'd like to hand over to Claudia to start the event for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Claudia. I'm the non-law rep for the Bar Society. So we've got a mix of questions, some specifically for the scholars, some for Beth, and some just general ones. So I think you all have seen the questions prior, so hopefully you know what you're answering. So we'll just start with the first one. So what has been your journey to this point? And that's for all of you, post-grad journey, and Beth, your journey as well. I think we're going to go in the same order that we said. So Alexi, if you want to start.
Fantastic. Well, as introduced, I'm the president of the Bar Society at Queen Mary. So my journey is not really elaborate. So at 18, I went to King's College London and did a history degree. My mainly focused in gender and sexuality and the Algerian War and the women's liberation movement in Britain. Absolutely hated my first degree, I'd like to say. Couldn't stand it, detested it. Every single second of it, I hated it. So I couldn't wait to get into law because it was all I cared about. And then I had like in between, so to say, my last final months at King's, I was like, what am I going to do? What if I don't like law? So I don't want to do the pupillage anymore or solicitor route. So following that break down on the phone to mum, I found this course which is the Accelerated LLB, and it basically bought time, which is the most important thing for me. So I didn't want to be 18 finishing at 21, GDL at 22, applying for pupillage and then straight in it. I needed a bit of a break. So then I found this degree called the Accelerated LLB, and from there went to Queen Mary. I found that they did it. I think Oxbridge do it as well, and it was just really great. But that's my journey so far. So yeah.
I think Anne-Marie, you were next. So.
Yes. Can everyone hear me clearly? Yeah, thank you. So essentially, I did the exact same course as Alexi. We were peers on at King's doing history. So I was quite different in the sense of like I genuinely loved our course. I did my dissertation module on scientific racism. So the discourse ranging from Immanuel Kant to, I don't know, expactions and mass migration in the 60s. And that gave me, I don't know, a heightened understanding of the world outside of just the monolith of barbarians and like the stereotypical World War I, World War II type of history. I was different in the sense of I didn't know that I wanted to get into law, but everyone around me knew, yeah, she's going to be a lawyer. And I didn't actually know the route because I don't know anyone in my family in this country, in Ghana, yes, but not in this country who's in law. So I was just doing networking events and understanding, okay, so the barristers are the ones who speak. And I've always been told that I'm very argumentative. So I was like, yeah, that's the route for me. So I wanted to do the GDL. Initially, I wanted to do the 2 years, but I thought the GDL would just be so I can do the master's, so I can specialize quickly, because I didn't want to, for me personally anyway, I found like the 3 years was me waiting to find out what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to have that period of aloofness. So I wanted to do the GDL and then do the master's that I'm doing currently right now before doing the BTC. I think it's changed now. So that's my route currently. So the GDL, and now I'm on to the master's degree at Leiden University.
Sam, I think you're next.
There seems to be a slight theme of Kings. I don't know if Alexi has anything to do with that, but I went straight from A-levels and did my undergrad in politics at King's as well. I was like Alexi and hated every single second at that hellhole, and couldn't wait to get away. But I think the main part of that was because I knew within my first or second year that I wanted to do law. So I was really looking forward to getting to the next stage. I focused on my undergrad in sort of non-state commercial actors and education policy. So I think that translates quite well to law now, where I want to go into like more commercial areas and like public law areas related to education. So now I'm doing the GDL at City.
Kendal, would you like to go next?
Yes, can everybody hear me? Yeah. So I did 3 years at Queen Mary, law, straight law, and then I did a year at the University of Hong Kong, which basically made it like a global law degree. And then following that, last year, I got a scholarship from Lincolnsen to complete the BPTC, but I actually did it with the LLM element, which is quite a new introduction. And essentially, it's the BPTC modules with an extra dissertation at the end, and you get a dual qualification. So I've just completed that at BPP, and I'm currently doing the BCL at Oxford at the moment. I've just started last week. And yeah, hopefully after I leave here, I'll start pupillage at some point.
Thank you. Beth, if you would like to just explain your journey as well.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a bit different. I don't have a legal background at all. I am the outreach coordinator at Lincolnsen. I fell into my job with the inn. I will have worked there for 2 years come January. I have a background in history. I have an MA in medieval studies because I decided employment was overrated. And then ended up becoming the assistant to the director of education at Lincolnsen last year. So got to see what all the education department do, got to see all the different things that the inn offers, and meet lots of our students and scholars and future barristers and current barristers and judges and all that jazz, and then decided that I wanted to work in outreach and secured the job about a year ago. So I've been doing it almost all from lockdown, which has been a fascinating way to learn a new job, but we're all adapting and coping, I think. So I'll be here to talk about the boring nitty-gritty stuff of what to expect from the actual application process rather than the personal stories.
Thank you all. So we're going to move on to our next questions. These are going to be specifically for the scholars. So firstly, I'd like to ask, why and how did you choose that specific Inn of Court, and when would you recommend becoming a member of an Inn of Court?
Great, so I'll answer the second part of the question first. So I wouldn't recommend becoming a member of the Inn of Court until you get your scholarship. This is just because once you get it, that's when you pay for it. So you don't have to be a member of a court to apply for a scholarship. So I became a member of Middle after I got mine. So the reason why I chose my specific inn, I've actually got quite a bit of a story, which I think is quite nice compared to other people who just go, oh, money. So it was, for me, it was between Midder and Inner, because they interview all applicants. And I think that's a really important part. So with the bar, it's 2 parts. You've got oral advocacy and written advocacy. Now, some days mine changes. Sometimes I'm better on paper, sometimes I'm better speaking to people. It really depends on what Alexi you get. And so sometimes I'm stronger with oral advocacy, as I said, and sometimes it's better with written. And also, you know the date you're being interviewed. So for me, with the GDL application, that was only a few months ago. So my paper application is actually going to be quite weak because I don't have much really to add to it. When I submitted it was in May, and I'm reapplying now in October. So because the interview is in April, I will have that extra time that I can build up and work on things to make my interview stronger than it probably would have been on the paper sift. But also, I remember at our bar and mooting society at King's College, a friend of mine went, you know, when you pick your inn, you have to pick the one that feels most like home. And that really, really resonated with me. So one time I was with the old president of the Bar Society, and we had to meet a barrister at Middle Temple, and it was torrential rainfall. It was like in the evening at night, and obviously the Inns of Court are very traditional and quite cozy in their feel. So we were running through the streets of Middle Temple absolutely soaked. So we went into this building called Taskers. We have like £1 hot chocolate and coffee. So immediately I was sold. But I was walking through the architecture, and it was just so cozy, and I was like, oh, I really, really, really like it here. And then that was a deciding factor for me. It's just where you feel like you belong. And I really think that's quite important, because everyone around you, if you kind of have like-minded people and you get along, it's more likely that you're going to fit in. It's a bit unfortunate now because you can't really visit the inns because of coronavirus and all that good stuff, but you can still look at photos, you can ask their opinions. My mentors both are Middle Templars, so they've got very, very, very strong and high opinions of it. I also really enjoy Middle Temple's outreach. So they do a lot of work in like immigration law and all this other stuff that really makes it progressive, and they really care about race. For instance, in lockdown, they did that week, the Middle Temple Summer School Week, which I thought was fantastic. So it kind of just pushes the ethos that I really like about that in. So for me, it was, they interviewed all applicants, it felt like home, and I knew a lot of people who went to Middle.
Anne-Marie?
So I'm very similar to Alexi in the sense of I would strongly advocate for you to join only after you get a scholarship. If you do get a scholarship, I wouldn't recommend the route of joining. It doesn't affect your application. So if you join early, they wouldn't consider that on your scholarship of, oh, they've joined early. That's for inner anyway. That could be different from the different inns. So in terms of as to why I chose inner, it was mainly because of the racial diversity. At King's, I felt particularly in the humanities section, it was very ethnically homogenous in the sense of it wasn't very diverse, and I wanted an inn that I belonged to represent people who've basically fought against the odds. If we're talking about the amount of ethnic minorities in this country, let alone going for this profession. And I was in communication with a Blessing. She runs a fantastic blog and radio, a podcast, sorry, on Spotify called Blessing at the Bar, and she helped me through the entire process. She showed me parts of Inner Temple in terms of like how forthcoming she was, how relaxed she was, and I noticed how relaxed she was when talking about Inner Temple, and I reckoned with that. So as an ethnic minority in this country, I had to be very careful with an atmosphere that I wasn't used to. So in terms of another reason as to why is because, as Alexi said, Inner Temple really hone in the fact they interview everyone. So I remember in third year calculating, okay, at least if I'm not strong in my applications, maybe I haven't done mooting. I only discovered what mooting was midway through third year. So I was like, okay, I've done debating and I'm good in other things. I know that I'm very strong in oral advocacy and just talking with people. So I knew at least if I get an interview, I can make a statement for myself where on paper I may not be able to perform. So yeah, those are the reasons for me.
Yeah, I agree completely with Alexi and Anne-Marie on the don't join until you need to, really, because I think it sort of links back to what Alexi says about feeling at home. And if you turn up to the interview and, you know, it's awful and you don't feel comfortable in the inn, but you've already joined, and then they reject you for a scholarship, well, you're gonna have to come back the next year and apply to that same inn and try and get the money from them again. So I think just give yourself options and join in early. I mean, there are obviously benefits to being part of the inn, but you have time when you're like doing the GDL or the bar course. I chose Grays mainly because it was the smallest inn. That was like the first point, so I felt quite comfortable there. I went to a few of the Barstock events at King's, and they held them at Grays, so I got to know quite a few of the people. And I'd also been to some of the other inns. I won't name them, but I didn't feel like the people were like as down to earth, and I liked that at Grays. It was nice that I could be talking to someone that was, you know, like 30 years into their career, and they were talking to me as if I was just like one of their friends. But then the money was obviously important. I can see Alexi laughing at me, but the average value of the awards awarded at Grace is the largest, and I couldn't afford to pay for the GDL myself or the bar course. So if you're looking for, so Grays give less awards away, but they're higher value. So I think the average for the GDL is about £7,500. And for the bar course, the maximum they offer is up to 30,000. So that was important to me as well. So I definitely wouldn't turn your nose off at that.
And Kendal.
So I'd reiterate what the other three panelists said, in that probably don't join an in before you get the scholarship, because I made that mistake and was lucky enough to get a scholarship from Lincoln's, but really kicked myself during the application process when I found out that middle and inner kind of interviewed everyone and didn't do a paper sift. So I was really stressing out. So that would be my advice, would be not to join before you get a scholarship. However, there are benefits of doing so. For example, you have to do qualifying sessions whilst you're doing the BPTC, and it's quite an intense year, so it's good if you join a little bit sooner to get ahead with the qualifying sessions in like 4th year of uni, or 3rd year if you do a 3-year degree. So that's that. And in terms of why I chose Lincoln's, actually, I was pondering this question for a while, and I asked quite a few barristers that I knew or had met on mini pupilages what their opinions were, and I kind of kept a note in my phone of like everyone's different answers, and I kind of read what everyone had said, and kind of made my own decision between that. So people told me like Lincoln's is the biggest and it has a lot of money, but Grace is the smallest and it's a bit more intimate, and I kind of just found what I liked in between all those different features, on top of the fact that I did know quite a lot of people already at Lincoln, so I just went for that one.
Perfect. So
I'm just going to interject just to play devil's advocate, because I've seen the questions just coming into the chat. We all kind of mentioned about interviewing applicants, but Lincoln's and Gray's kind of help out a bit. So for instance, their paper sift isn't as arbitrary as something, like they do take into consideration and look at you as a well-rounded applicant. And if you want to go to that in, don't be deterred just thinking, oh, because they don't interview me, I'm not going to get it, because Sam and Kendal are the success stories of that. So if there is an in that you genuinely like and you genuinely want to join, a paper sift might be helpful because it might curb your expectations or even give you that boost of confidence if you get through. So I really would hone in, just sort of like look at the awards and see if you actually want to be there before going, oh no, I'm just only going to apply for these two because those two interview everyone, because the interview, might not even be that important in the end.
Beth, do you have an opinion as well regarding like when to join an in? And obviously I know you're an outreach coordinator of Lincoln, so you're obviously a bit biased, but any kind of advice that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I will say is I am more familiar with Lincoln's process, but the intercourt are not in competition with each other. So I won't be, trumpeting Lincoln's at the expense of anyone else. I always say join the in that feels right for you. People make their decision on which in of court is right for them for the most arbitrary reasons. One of our members told me the other day he joined Lincoln's because it's the only inn that has sit-down service for all their meals. And I was like, sure, if that's what did it for you, great. Whatever floats your boat. I would say, again, reiterate that don't join an inn before you apply for scholarship. Some people do because they want to maybe start mooting or debating. We do allow student members to join our mooting and debating societies prior to starting their bar course, but that's kind of only in exceptional circumstances. It's not a general rule, and that's generally students who are really desperate for the experience might do that. I wouldn't recommend it. I'd say wait, try and get experience elsewhere through your university, through your bar society. You're all here, so that's a good start. And there's lots of events that all the ends of court put on that are open to non-members. Some of our pupillage advice sessions across the inn are open to non-members. So there are things that you can take advantage of that the inns of court offer that you don't have to be a member of an inn to like attend. So I would say wait, make your scholarship application, and then it may be that the next year you decide to apply for a different inn of court. But if you're unsuccessful, but if you've already joined, you're locked in. That's your inn of court for life. So I'd always recommend keep your options open. on that one. But if you have joined in a court already, it's not the end of the world. You're going to land on your feet.
Okay, perfect. We did just get a question in the chat box in terms of how to get a feel for each in remotely. I don't know if any of the panelists will be able to answer that, just because if they went to physically see the inns, they probably have a different experience. But if there's any advice, especially from Beth, of how to get a feel for an inn.
Yeah, I'd say all the inns of court have outreach teams. I am the entirety of Lincoln's outreach team, so I'm happy to let you know my contact details and the contact details for the folks at Grays, Inner and Middle. We all do regular events, so for example, today I was running a Q&A event with some of our barristers, and I'll be running more of those later on during lockdown. I know that I'm also happy to take phone calls and chat to individual students if you have particular questions or just want to get in touch with some members who practice in particular areas of law. I know that the other outreach teams are happy to do that as well and are running their own events, and their own stuff is going on constantly. We're all trying to diversify, so I'd recommend getting in touch with the inns, seeing what they have to offer, because we are trying to still reach out to you guys even if we can't do it physically.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask a question from like the list that we've got, and then we can like go back and forth between the chat box. So for the scholars, what was the application process like?
Oh, I'll never forget, because it was in my final year exams amongst application form. So it was so I'll sort of describe the chronology of it. So it opened on the website 4 weeks before it closed, and I used every single one of those days of those 4 weeks. So you have your generic questions like your name, what you do, grades, all that stuff, and then you've got like 5 more topical questions. So it'll be like, what's the weakness of yours, what's the strength, name a situation where you've demonstrated adversity or a dilemma or anything like that, and those ones really take a lot of time. So I was sending it to whoever was willing to read my application. They would read it over and over again. My poor mentor is the busiest man alive, and I'll send it to him like 3 in the morning and he was replying at 3:05. Like, it was ridiculously hectic. And then in the website, they have provisional interview dates. So make sure you check what those are and that you're not doing anything on those dates. Book them both out, because your interview could be on either or. And then following the applications that was submitted literally on the day it was due. When I said I took those 4 weeks, I took every single one of those days. It was about 2 hours before. And then you get sent a finance form. And this, because all scholarships are awarded on merit. However, the amount you get is means tested. So they put in like savings and your earnings and all that stuff. And then you have the interview. So on Middle Temple, it's sent through Starleaf. That's the platform that they use. So I'd recommend that whatever platform they tell you to download, please do it well before your interview date, because you don't want any technical difficulties there. And yeah, that was about 15 minutes long and it felt like 2 minutes. And I will tell you, after my interview, I literally went into my bed and cried because I thought I messed it up completely, like completely messed it up. I thought I got it completely wrong. I even called my mentor and I was like, oh, I messed it up. I'm so sorry for wasting your time. Obviously didn't. But you know, you can prepare for those interviews as much as you possibly think. You can Google every question, but I promise you now, they will ask you question you absolutely cannot prepare for. So I had a moot, I think I did about 2 moots before my application. The moot was 3 years ago. I don't remember the content, I don't remember who did it with, I don't remember anything about it. It was actually half a sentence on my application form, and that was the first question he asked me, was to tell me about the moot you did in 2018 at King's College London. I literally had a moment where I was like, oh my god. So please make sure anything you put on your application, you know, if you say you're an Arsenal fan, know every single team player on there and know how they performed, because if they ask you a question about it, you need to know. And it's not that they're trying to catch you out or anything like that. They're just assessing you as a future barrister, and you need to be able to think on your feet. And that is the most essential skill for judicial intervention and that good stuff. So make sure that you are available to answer whatever they ask you. And then also, when they ask you a question, just really think about it as well. But that was kind of the whole process, and it was stretched over. So the application was due in May, and I had my interview in July, and I got the response in August. So it's about like a 4-month process all in all. But really take it seriously. It does seem like it's like very short questions, but they are really important, and you need to make sure that you're very concise and you prepare properly for it, because it's difficult. It's very, very hard to do.
So in terms of the application process for me, I remember I was in the middle of writing my dissertation. That time, pre-lockdown, I was actually in lockdown, because for dissertations, you can't really go outside and you have to be inside. So I remember downloading the entirety of the application, going through it the day before. I would say I'm different in the sense it took me like, I would say 4 days, because I had been calling Inner Temple 2 months before the application. She was like, oh, have they released it now? Have they released it? Have they released it? And they could tell I was very much of an eager beaver, probably annoyed them. But then they sent me a personal email saying, oh, we've released it now. I was like, thank you. Because I knew that I had deadlines. And I would say if you're in your final year of, irrespective of law or whatever subject you're doing, be concise for your deadlines. And irrespective, my heart goes out to you, the fact that we are in lockdown, so the days seem like they're one big conglomerate mesh, but please be concise with your deadlines. If you know that you have to submit an application by time, make sure you've scheduled out time to write it out. I would say that I was fortunate in the sense of I like to have in-person interviews. I don't like this Zoom. I'm very much of a boom in the sense of I don't like talking via this in terms of to get my point across. I think things are lost via this way, but I think you can make up for it. Anyway, going back to the applications. So they ask questions such as, why do you want to be a barrister? I know that's going to be another question, but I had to really go into the recourse of my mind and understand, like, why do I actually want to go into law? And it was very personal to myself. I think I wrote, and I remember meeting up with one of the men that, one of the barristers that interviewed me before lockdown, and he said that he liked how unique my answers were. So I said, for example, I have stamina, and I was able to prove my stamina because in 3rd year, I'd go to the library at night because I was working during the day, and I would make sure I just have like 4 or 5 hours of sleep just to make sure I'm catching up, but I knew I was hungry for the law. So make sure it's personal to yourself. Of course, student room is handy for things of sifting through stuff, but make sure you actually question yourself. Why is it that you want to go into law? So the application process, I made sure I submitted 2 weeks before it was like closed. I don't know, I just wanted to get it out the way. Interviews were very daunting. I remember just feeling if I wanted to be sick and just praying and just playing gospel music on my way and just ignoring the entire world. And I would say that's a good thing, irrespective of the fact of if you do or don't get nerves, turn off social media for that entire day. Don't contact anyone bar your family. Don't let anyone distract you, because you have to focus on why you're going there. It's kind of like, you know, The Apprentice when they're very serious, like just go into that momentum. And just be confident. So I slipped up on one of my questions. I remember she asked me about, again, it was a moot, and then I got it wrong with another moot that I had done before that, and then she wanted to see how I would save it. I was like, so all the moots show that I'm basically good at being a barrister. So then they're like, oh, okay, she's confident, even though she's wrong, she's confident. And just being confident in your question and in your answers, I would say, yeah.
I found the grades application quite fact heavy. So I know from middle and inner, there's quite a lot of questions. So Anne-Marie mentioned that, you know, like, why do you want to be a barrister? Whereas the grades application, it just started, it was, you know, like the basics, like your grades, any achievements. I would say that on that section, because the form is quite fact heavy, that when they ask for you to, you know, like list achievements or your interest, like to really take the time and like pad that out, because that's the only way you're going to be different from the other people, because, you know, everyone's going to have the degree, everyone's going to have the A levels, and that's the only way you can sort of stand out in that respect. The application form, and then sort of focused on what areas of law you're interested in, and then the rest of it was just experience, you know, like tell me about the mini pupilages, tell me about your court visits. So it opened in March, and I obviously started like immediately and was like Alexi and just spent so much time on it, obsessing over it, sending it to people, making sure that I'd not made like a single error, because if you make an error, I think that they'll throw it out immediately. So it got to obviously with Grey's, I had to then get shortlisted. So I got an email about a month later saying that I'd been shortlisted, and then they tell you your interview dates. And they, I think a day before your interview, they send an activity. That's how it was done for mine anyway, for like the virtual ones. Normally I think you get it like 15 minutes before, but I was lucky and got it on the day. And there was 2 questions to choose from, and you had to sort of like prepare your response to it. So it came to the interview date, and I was so scared. And there was like 4 QCs all sat there, and they didn't even say hello when it went on. It just opened, and then there was like, okay, we're now ready for you to deliver on whichever argument you think. So I was like, so I've picked the first one. And my voice was cracking, and I was so scared. And then I sort of settled into it and made sure that I was like, I have 3 points to make. The first point is this, and I like really made sure there's a structure to what I'm saying, a skill of a barrister, and then I just took them through that. And then obviously they were like, here's why I disagree, let's wait for your response. So I think just use the skills that you would from a moot and use it in that sense. And then I had prepared for questions, like, why do you want to be a barrister? Because they went on the application form. But Grey's, the questions were a lot of, tell me a time where you have shown this skill. And the skills mainly linked to the ones listed on the website. So they've got like academic ability and whatever other like core competencies they're looking for. They really wanted you to give examples of that. And that was it. So I think it's like 2 months in total. And that was through my exams, so quite stressful for the GDL. But I'm glad I did it. I think a lot of people would not apply. Like I nearly didn't apply myself because I thought I wouldn't get it, and obviously I did. So please apply.
Just before Kendal speaks, we just got a question in for Sam, which is, when you fill in the achievement section of the Grey Scholarship form, should you just list it or give a description for each one?
I actually asked Grace about this because I didn't know, like, if you're applying for a solicitor firm, there's like, the star structure you're supposed to adopt. And I don't think it's really clear for the bar a lot of the time what they're looking for. But with the sort of achievement section and mini pupillage section, if anything was like factual, I just made sure that it was like bullet pointed, really clear. And yeah, that was it really.
Thank you. Kendal?
Yes, so I think a bit more similar to Sam. With Grey's, the Lincoln's application is also quite fact heavy. So you start with like personal details and then basically education. But what I found is that it goes quite far back. So like it asks for your achievements in school. And I was a bit like, oh, I mean, I don't even remember what I did in school. So I think you kind of, before the applications open, I think you kind of need to make sure you have all the materials that you're going to need. So literally everything you've ever done, have it in a document somewhere, so it's there for you to access. Because it was asking you literally like what you did at GCSE and kind of the things you participated in school, and then it goes on to university stuff, achievements, grades, stuff like that. And then pre-standard stuff, employment history, many pupillages, work experience, and then we go on to the questions, which are like, why do you think you're going to be a good barrister? Why do you have the necessary qualities for the bar? It also asks you, I think, what kind of particular areas of law you're interested in. And I think the Lincoln's application is really focused on you showing that you've thought about things really thoroughly, and not just you're applying for this really randomly, but you know that you want to be a barrister, you know exactly what area of law you want to do, and this is why, so refer to many pupillages you've done. And then obviously, as Alexi said, it's based on merit, but how much you get is based on financial means, so you have to provide some financial information at the end of the application. In terms of the interview itself, I was, again, really, really nervous for it. But I think what what I liked about Lincoln's was they send you a list of questions, I think maybe 4 or 5 days before the interview, with all the potential questions you could be asked, so you know what to prepare for, so you're not going in there blind. So I kind of just did I actually probably did more preparation for the interview than I did for the application itself. And I kind of went into the interview knowing everything I could possibly say about anything in the world to do with what I talked about in my application, and also more generally to do with law and the areas of law I was interested in. So one thing about Lincoln's is that you usually get asked to do kind of like a mini presentation at the end of the questions. And I think this is something that trips a lot of people up. And I'd kind of vaguely been told about it, but didn't really know what it was. And I thought I messed up really badly. So I'd say kind of when they send you the questions, kind of know what topic you would pick or what you would talk about, because you really need to be spot on with that, because they grill you. But yeah, in terms of the questions they ask, it's quite pretty standard stuff, like, you know, mooting, why you like a particular area of law, what you did on a particular mini pupillage. I mean, a question that I had, which I didn't quite like, was they asked me about a case that I'd worked on during a mini pupillage, and it was, I don't know, like 4 years ago, and I just had no idea. And I was like, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't remember it. And they weren't impressed by that, but it is what it is. So yeah, I think just prepare and be confident, because I was honestly so nervous when I walked in. The barristers didn't actually say hi to me, and I just sat down and I was like, I just don't even know what to do, I don't know where to look. And I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. But you just have to like act confident, and even if you don't feel like you're doing a good job, you probably are, so just have confidence in yourself. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Just quickly, Kendal, a question's just come in about the mini presentations. So I just wondered if you wanted to say anything else.
Yeah, so when I arrived, so basically we got a document, as I say, about 4 or 5 days before, with some example questions that we could be asked, and then on the end of the document it says something like, you may also be asked to present something, or you know, do a short presentation on a particular area of law or something. I can't remember exactly what it said, but when I got to this Lincolnsen for the interview, we got handed a sheet of paper, and it basically just said, you at the end of your presentation, at the end of your interview, you'll be asked to talk about like a recent case that you found interesting, or something that you've worked on, like a dissertation or something like that. And you'll be asked questions on it. So I then chose, I'd done an essay for, I think, IP, and it was about a case which I basically criticised in the Court of Appeal, and I talked about that, and I just presented what the case was about, what the arguments were, and what the judgment was, and why I thought it was wrong. And then they grilled me on that, and then yeah, that was it.
Thank you. So Beth, I'm going to ask you some questions in a bit about the application process specifically. I'm conscious that we've got some questions in the chat, so I just want to go through those, a couple of those quickly. So someone's asked as to whether the inns have a preferred provider and location for the BPTC should you receive an award. So I don't know if any of the panelists want to take that.
I can pick that.
Just
hop in. Sorry, Beth, go for it. Go for it. You're probably more knowledgeable than I am.
But in terms of, I'm going into the BPTC like the year after my masters, and no, during the reason, another reason as to why I chose INA is because they fund you the same award, so you can go for higher for your BPTC. So I knew that I had money for the next qualifier to become a barrister. But no, they've made no mention. But I did get hints slightly from people, barristers from the inn, that said that they genuinely love City. City University is seen as like I don't know, for some it's seen as the GOAT. Like, but it's a case of go with which one you prefer. So for example, I did my GDL at City, I've just finished, and I won't be going there for my BPTC. It's just that simple. But yeah, that's the only thing I'll contribute on that matter.
Thank you for that. And just also another question. So do you have to be in the final year of your law degree to apply for a scholarship, or can you apply before then? So that's specifically for a law degree. So I think, Kendal, if you want to take that.
As far as I'm aware, it's you have to. Sorry, was the question? Does it have to be in the final year of law degree? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Final, or can you apply before that?
So I'm not 100% sure about this. So anyone that's interested in the answer will need to look it up. But I'm pretty sure it has to be in the final year. And another point on that, you can't defer I don't think, well, I know we were told that you can't defer a scholarship, like unless it's in exceptional circumstances, like something's happened. But like if you get a scholarship in that year, I think you're expected to take it. And yeah, I think they do it like a year ahead. So if you want it for the next year, you'll need to do it in the final year. So
perfect. So I'm just gonna ask another question, which Anne-Marie's kind of covered and Sam kind of covered too. But how do you recommend answering questions like, why do you want to do law? Why do you want to be a barrister, without sounding generic? I know that everyone's got personal experiences of answering this question, but if you have any tips on how to not sound like a basic answer.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of to echo what Kendal said, is like, want to see that you're not just there to get free money, you're there because this is the route that you really want to take. And it kind of answers the question that Amy asked, if you can apply about any mini pupillage experience. You definitely can. In this year, I've been told to take it into consideration of lockdown, coronavirus. There've been no minis up for grabs. It's been really difficult. But my answer to this question is, it's introspective. Like, why do you want to be a barrister? Why are you applying? There is a reason. You need to dig it out within you. Why? Personally, I love law. I've always loved law. I did law A level. I really enjoyed that law is literally everything around you. You go to the supermarket to buy a packet of sweets. That's a contract. Planning permission is a contract. Environment is a contract. Environment and medicine both leads into tortious duty. Is it remoteness? Is it this? Is it that? It's literally everything. And I think it would be very naive to be like, oh, I'm not interested, because it's literally surrounding you. You have a problem, your first person you're trying to contact is your law student friend. You can go, oh yeah, so my landlord said this thing about my contracts, and like, is it legal, can you do this? And I'm like, I've literally only studied criminal law so far, why are you asking me? Like, I have no clue. So that's why I love it. It's just so in everything, and it, as I said before, it bleeds into every single aspect of your life. So I mean, why wouldn't you be interested in that, is my opinion. I think it's the most interesting topic in the world. And I was discussing the environment bill with my boyfriend and my dad, who have no interest in law, they like sports. And they were like, Alexi, shut up. So I think if you really enjoy it so much, you're talking about it to people who don't care, it's a good indicator this is for you. The bar, why do I want to be a barrister? And for me, as like to echo what Anne said before, I'm argumentative. I don't shut up. If I have a point, I'm going to tell you this point and you're going to listen to my point. I really enjoy the competitiveness, the argumentativeness of it, the camaraderie, skimming through details to try and find an argument to win, but also guessing what the other side's going to say. That's a massive part of it. I like thinking on my feet. And also with the bar, it's kind of like the only part of British history that isn't controversial. It's just beautiful and it's just historical and it's absolutely wonderful. And I think it's the last shreds of English history that we have left. I hope they don't get the wigs. I love the wigs. I love the cloaks. I love the robing rooms. I love the chambers. I just love everything about it. I could literally talk about it all day if you want me to. I will not shut up. You know, it's a lot of second guessing. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I think, remember, when you have these interviews, you're going to sit across people who have been trying to suss people out and catch them out for about 20 years. I mean, it's benches of the inn, it's QCs, it's people who know what they're doing. So if you're going to go in there and try to not be genuine or authentic, they're going to smell it off of you by the time you open your mouth within 3 words. So it needs to be really authentic. It needs to, as I said before, it needs to be genuine. Why do you really ask yourself, because it took me about 2 days to really gather my answers, like really and truly, why do you want to be a barrister? And it's the points I've mentioned before. I just genuinely love it and I can't see myself doing anything else. And if you can really bring that in your interview, it doesn't matter if you haven't got any mini pupillages, because you can watch court trials online now. So I put a post up on Cream Bar Society, Uber and Aslam, the whole trial proceedings is on the Supreme Court website. You can watch the whole thing and you can email a barrister their opinion on it. That's basically what a mini pupillage is. It's not really anything that's an indicator between you or someone else. It's kind of like someone got there before you. If you can bring out and demonstrate the interpersonal skills as to why you want to be a barrister. So for instance, if you say you're a car mechanic, you know, and there are interpersonal skills in that translate to the bar. That's client care, that's staying on a schedule, that's teamwork, that's dealing with issues and solving them very quickly. Like, those are the sort of transferable skills that lead into the bar. So the many people, it just doesn't really matter, or traditional forms of work experience doesn't really matter either. That's those questions asked that for a reason. They really want to know what it is about you that you love law. Do you want to be a barrister for? I hope that kind of helps with that one.
If you want to add anything to that, go ahead.
I think Alexi summarised it perfectly. I just think it's so introspective as to why you want to become a barrister. For me personally, I didn't know anything about law, so this may sound nonsensical, but I didn't even know you could pursue it further than A-level. Like, I didn't know it was an option for me. I just assumed that you did history or you did a conversion. I didn't actually know anything outside of it. So it was very introspective, but I'd always been an advocate. So I went to a secondary school, so a state school, and most of my friends usually got permanently excluded or excluded in some form of fashion. And they'll be like, oh, Anne-Marie, yeah, can you represent me in front of the head of year, and why the governors, and why I can't be sent to another school where I have beef with another person and I know I'll get kicked out of that one. So Anne-Marie, please, can you be my advocate? And I did this. I did this from year 9 onwards. I would sit in and the teachers would find it funny, but then they'll be like, okay, she's got something there. And I explained that was my process to finding out what being a barrister was. So I didn't know what all this technical jargon terminology was. I just knew that I was very good at arguing a point and being retrospective and thinking about the opposition, thinking about whether or not the governors would see from my side. So I expressed that, and I don't think you have to come from a structure, as Alexi pointed out perfectly. You don't have to come from a world of mini pupilages or public school, for example. It's very much for you. Outside of just studying it, as Alexi was saying before, for example, for my GDL exam on public law, I couldn't shut up about regulations 26B in the recent coronavirus regulations in March, and how the term reasonable literally mirrors Liversidge v. Anderson, and all my family were like, we don't care. But I just couldn't stop talking about it. Or just there was a webinar, and I think you guys can access it on the IBA website, where Jessica Seymour and Lord Neuberger were talking about the internal market bill and how that has propagations for people in the judiciary, and it's very interesting. So if you find yourself leaning towards these elements of life and just law, and as Alexi said, it's all around you, then you have your answer there. If it's just for, and not to shoot anyone down, but if it's just for the title or what you've heard about it, check again. Make sure you're very clear about why you want to become a barrister, and be hungry for the law. I think that's the best way to summarize that question.
I would just add one thing. So I think Anne-Marie and Alexi are entirely right. Like, you can clearly tell that they're both passionate about the law, and I am also a massive law geek. And through undergrad, I love talking about it, and my friends hate me, but that's fine. The important thing I've seen, like in the little chat box thing, that a few people have mentioned that, you know, they've done like non-legal careers, and I think that's an important point when you were doing this section about why you want to be a barrister, or, you know, what area of laws you're interested in. You've got your own experiences, and everyone will have their own experiences, and I think you can use any of that as an example of why you're interested in being a barrister, or why you are interested in a specific area of law. And if you were looking for a unique answer, no one else is going to have your experience. So I think that's just, you know, don't diminish anything that you've done in the past, even if it's not, you know, like strictly academic or strictly legal, and use that as why you want to be a barrister, because as Alexi says, it is introspective, and there is a reason why you're applying for a scholarship to the bar.
I'm not sure there's really much I can add, because I think everything's probably been covered, but I'd just like to say one thing, and that's, if you make any sort of statement about why you like want to do law or why you want to be a barrister, you always need to back it up with evidence. Because when you're in an interview and they ask you why do you want to be a barrister, and you're like, and you say something, and they'll be like, but why? Like, you need to tell them, I want to be a barrister because I watched a court case when I was 15 with school, and I thought it was really exciting and and like, you can't just say statements like, I really like the law, but why? You just really need to know. And what I think what Sam was saying is really valuable, like, don't diminish anything you've done, because your desire to become a barrister or to do law, it could have come from the most minute, like, stupid thing that you would be embarrassed to tell someone. And like, I mean, for me personally, I started getting into like this whole like, I was just so wowed by this whole barrister thing and how traditional it was when I was really young. And I used to watch a TV program with my dad where it was like set in Lincolnsen, and there was loads of barristers, and I thought it was so amazing. And that's when I actually started looking into kind of that area, and I was literally like 10, and I was really like, I wouldn't have said that in an interview, but my dad was like, well, you know, just tell the truth, and you can say, obviously it started here, and then because of that I went on to get many pupillage, and I did this and I did this. But yeah, to summarize, I think it's just really important to always have an example or evidence of your statement, because if you don't, then you will just get grilled on it, and you really need to show why you really like this and why you really want to do this.
Thank you. If I could just ask Beth, because Sam mentioned the like mature students and people who haven't perhaps gone straight into law, could you just answer, I don't know if you can see the question in the chat box from Amy, but could you just maybe answer that, if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to kind of career changes, it's not uncommon in the law for barristers to come to the bar slightly later in life. Obviously, we do have plenty of students who find their enthusiasm and what they want to do at a young age and pursue that. But career changing is not unusual. And I would say, don't be put off if your GCSEs and your A-levels aren't fantastic. There is much more weight put on your degree and what you get at degree level, and also who you have become since. So the interview panel, they aren't interested in who you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. They're interested in who you are now and who you have the potential to be. And what the scholarship process is assessing, do you have the potential to be a good advocate? And it's not about whether you had the potential when you were a teenager, it's about whether you have the potential now. And if you have years of work experience in a professional capacity under your belt, that is life experience that you can turn to your advantage, and don't disregard it. Don't think that it isn't important. It is. Turn it to your advantage.
Thank you for that. So I think a lot of I think most of the panelists have kind of answered the question in terms of like when they started to write their applications. So I'm just going to ask you, so what general advice do you have for scholarship applicants and their applications? There's been a few questions in the chat regarding any ways that you can build up advocacy skills, any experience that you would recommend people having for their applications. Is there anything that you think helped you stand out when you were making your applications?
Yeah, so what I'd say that I really like about the bar compared to any other area of law is that they just really love resilience. They really care about you as an individual. They don't look at you as a grade. So my GCSEs and A-levels were not great, I won't lie. There was plenty of C's in there in comparison to probably half of this panel's got like all A stars. Also, I submitted an application for the GDL scholarship in my third year of history when I had 1 mini pupillage, no idea what I was doing, submitted it in about, I wrote it in a day, batted off instantly. That was at grades. That's why I didn't apply back there. Another thing, a bit salty. But no, just because you got rejected once doesn't mean you're going to get rejected again. And my mentor gave me really fantastic advice the other day, and it's like, how are you going to walk into a room prejudging yourself, walking in with the insecurities and not expecting to pick up on it? If you walk in like, this is mine, you're going to love me, you're going to give it to me, and I'm going to write my LinkedIn post in a month saying I've got my scholarship, then you're going to get it. That was actually in my head the entire time, like, I am going to get this. This is mine. Like, I need this as a part of my career. Like, I really, really need this. And when you walk in with that attitude, your body and your mentality is going to follow it. And if you're really negative, then that's just going to follow it as well. If it helps, so I did my degree, and when I was doing my degree, I was a makeup artist for 3 years, and that was 2 days a week. So obviously my grades sometimes suffer because of it, because I couldn't do all the compulsory readings and the weekly readings and the further readings. But from that, I gained a lot of transferable skills. And if you look at the was it application criteria or selection criteria, it's actually really important. And I mentioned this in my interview, and I said the reason why I really like middle and all ins in particular is because intellectual ability is 25% of your application. They're assessing you on, you can not do that great, you could just get C's and D's, but if you are so strong in the rest of it, you can probably get a scholarship. And it's like potential to succeed at the bar, personal qualities, and I can't remember the third one, but those are really important and really push them out in the application. So I put in my application, I was like, I haven't got the strongest grades, but oh my goodness, can you throw a lot of work at me and I can get it all done and quickly, or I can think on my feet, or you can throw anything at me and I can take it. Like I had 2 dissertations, 5,000 word essay and an exam in 1 month, and it got done. It wasn't fantastic, but it got done and I got through that. And if you can bring out these skills in a concise and genuine way, you'd be so surprised how far it can take you. So don't worry if you've got many pupilages, you've got a conventional route, or you've done something else, you're not like everyone else. They're not looking for carbon copies, they're looking for people who can win a case and who can get on with their clients. You're self-employed, you need to be likable, your clerks need to like you to get work, and you need to source out your own work. If you're an unlikable person but really, really smart, you're not really going to do that well at the bar because no one's going to hire you. So that's really, really important. And you need to bring out the qualities of yourself that aren't listed in the form. So I think someone put that in there, like, oh, there's something that my form won't allow me to do. There's a section in the Middle Temple form, and it's like, what else do you want to talk about? I went on a tangent about things that I think were really important and need to be brought out in the interview, because you're going to learn this, because it's really important for me and for you to know. And it's just to bring out those personal qualities. So as I said before, I worked in a makeup store. Makeup and law seem very different, don't they? No, I've got someone in a chair that I'm talking to for an hour. I need to sell them £400 of products to hit my daily targets. I had to work with a team of 30 people, and most of the time I couldn't stand them. I also had to do conferences, I had to teach people masterclasses, I had to hit my targets, client care, deal with customer complaints. I worked in Covent Garden, which meant I had to deal with not only people in London, but people globally. So it showed that I had those interpersonal skills to deal with people I couldn't even talk to in English. So it's just bring out those little things, because those are things that really make you seem unique over someone who's just studied and has nothing else to bring to the table. You could easily trump someone who's got always stars, first class, top of the list and all that good stuff, as long as you've got something to back it up and prove it, and I think that's really, really important. So that's what I'd say. And just with those application forms, I think someone said that inner has 1,000 words. Middle Temples is restricted to 200 words per question. So concision is very, very important with that. So I just recommend just keeping it. Barristers really like things to be concise and clear, because they're busy. They're doing this for free, I believe, the interviews and reading the application. So if you keep it concise and clear and genuine, you're going to do just fine.
If anyone else wants to add anything to that, Beth as well, if you want to add anything to any advice you have for applicants.
So just echoing off of what Alexi said, I'm weird in the sense of like, I was kind of like very much nerdy in the sense of like, I like academia, but then I had to expand more. So my problem was the fact that I hadn't done anything significant in my view for the applications outside of just academia, making sure I did like very well, and because that had always been drummed into me. But then, as Alexi put perfectly, they're like, okay, so what else? So you have to be able to deliver and make yourself as unique as possible. I would say try very hard to do very well in your degree though. Like, don't put that off. And in GDL year, just a small thing, if you find that learning in 1 year isn't for you, don't do the GDL. Do the LLB, which is just as good. GDL sometimes is seen as, yeah, you've done that, but the LLB is seen as more professional to some people. But if you just want to get out the park, you like exams, and I really like exams, just do the GDL, but make sure that you're balancing your extracurriculum as well as your academia, because inevitably, particularly depending on what area of the bar you want to go to, but sometimes it will count.
I would say 2 things for sort of general advice. I mentioned before about actually submitting the form. I know so many people that have said, I want to be a barrister, I'm going to apply for a scholarship, and then they go, but I'll do it in like a few years when I'm ready, when I've got the experience. It's like, you have the experience now. Like, you don't need to be the finished product at this stage. Like, just submit the form, and, you know, if you get it, well done. If not, take the year out that you're going to take anyway. I think for Alexi's right, on the other box, Zinn also have this, and this was something that I got told about before submitting, and the idea that you can overcome things at the bar is really important, because it's going to be a really difficult job. So for me, I did, you know, grew up in the north, went to a state school, single mother, low income, but rather than framing that as a negative, it was very much, but look at everything else I've done, look at my extracurriculars, look at my grades. And I think if you can sort of frame something that you've overcome and frame that as a positive, and how that makes you different to other people, that's probably one of the best ways that you can stand out from other people, because there's going to be lots of people at the bar that have, you know, gone from public school, gone through their Oxford degree, done very well. And if you haven't got that, then you're automatically different, but that's a strength rather than a weakness.
I don't really have that much to add, apart from what I would say is, I think you can't, like, the importance of your grades can't be diminished in the sense that you do have to achieve, like, the best you can. You don't necessarily have to have a first, but you should really work hard, because like, beyond scholarship, a lot of chambers, you know, are quite strict and like heavy on the focus on the grades. So I think it's like super important that you do achieve the best you can in your degree, but just as important is your extracurricular. So if you go in there with a, you know, all firsts and the rest of it, but you don't have anything else on the side, so you've not been involved in any societies, you don't have any mini pupilages, or, you know, anything, well, what are you actually going to talk about in your interview? You actually don't have anything to talk about. It's so important that you do have something, and also something that makes you stand out a bit. So I don't know, that you're on the society for dance, or something that is maybe a bit outside of the law, but shows that you still have outside interests beyond law. That's, I found, something that they do like to talk about and they do like to see. So again, in like the other box on the application, you can talk about hobbies that you have, and I've heard like a few barristers actually say that the people that stood out the most to them weren't the people who had a first, or, you know, had the best many pupilages, but it was actually the people that had like a really unique hobby, or ended up talking about like a book that they'd read which they really enjoyed for like the whole interview. So what I'm trying to get at is, grades are so important, and, you know, extracurriculars, many pupilages, legal work experience is so important, but the most important thing is actually you, and how you present yourself, and who you are, and just having a bit of character. Like, no one wants like someone who doesn't have any character to come and work with them. No one wants someone who doesn't have any character to be their barrister. You know, you have to have a bit of something, and I think you get that by doing other stuff beyond just sitting at a desk all day and studying.
Beth, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, reiterating what the others have said, we aren't looking for legal robots. We don't expect you to just be able to recite all of the law and have no personality. Remember that the people reviewing your application and doing your interviews have read a dozen applications that day. They've met a dozen candidates. They want something that's going to make you memorable. And if that's, you know, you juggle in your spare time, or you know, you have read the whole works of Shakespeare. I don't know, if you've done something unusual, if you're different, if you've climbed Mount Everest, or, you know, played a sport for the last 10 years, or have grade 5 flute, whatever it is, like something that just makes you a little bit different and shows you have a tiny bit of personality, that might be what they need to make you stick in their mind and remember you. And if you can make it relevant to your application, great. You know, be interesting, and don't be frightened to be unique.
Thank you over that. So I've got a few questions which are specifically for Beth, and outreach for Lincolnsen. So firstly, what are the various scholarships available at Lincolnsen?
So like all the Inns of Court, we offer scholarships for the GDL and for the bar course. Our GDL scholarships are the Lord Bowen, the Lord Haldane, and the Lord Brougham in that order. So the Lord Bowen is the most prestigious, and the Lord Haldane is the least prestigious, but getting any scholarship of any kind is really good going. For the bar course, we split our scholarships into 3 categories. The majority of our scholars receive either a major or a minor award. So our major scholarships are the Lord Denning, the Marchant, and the Tancred. Our minor scholarships are Cassell, Droop, Kennedy, Mary McMurray, and Sir Thomas More. They are entirely means tested. So the name of your scholarship is based on merit. So if you get a major scholarship, that means that you've done slightly better than someone who gets a minor scholarship, but the amount of funding you receive is entirely dependent on the amount of money you need, with the exception at Lincoln's of the Lord Mansfield Scholarship. Lord Mansfield Scholarship is our highest award. We award a maximum of 5 of those a year, and it comes with minimum funding of £20,000. So that is the only one that comes with any monetary value attached. Potentially you can get more than 20,000 if you need it, but at Lincoln's it's quite unlikely. I think the highest we've awarded is 22,000 last year. We don't cap our scholarships, so potentially you can get more than that if your need is particularly great, but it's unlikely. As Sam said, Gray's award slightly higher monetary value than the other inns. The others tend to be around the 20,000 mark as a max on that. So those are the scholarships that we offer.
Thank you. A question that we've got prepared, but also someone asked this in the chat. So how important are references and who the referee is? So their occupation, how long they've known them for, and things like that.
So we do have guidance for referees to help them fill out a reference. I realised today, just before this event, that the guidance document doesn't actually download from our web page currently. So I am getting that fixed. It will be fixed by tomorrow, I promise. But with references, it will depend on your situation. If you're currently studying, we would expect at least 1 reference to be academic, and it would be completely appropriate to have 2 academic references if you felt that was the best people to be your references, if you felt your lecturers were the people who knew you best and could speak to your qualities the best. If you're currently working, it would be perfectly acceptable to have a professional reference to support your application at Lincoln's, because obviously your employer, if you have been out of education for many years, your employer is going to know you and be able to talk to your qualities much better than a lecturer who maybe hasn't seen you in years. We will also take character references, but they tend to be less strong. If you are going to have a character reference, I would recommend thinking hard about the capacity in which they know you and whether they can talk to your academic ability, your personal integrity, your enthusiasm for the bar. Those are the points that are going to be looked at in your reference. I would say don't worry, don't get too anxious about your references, partially because you can't read through them beforehand, so it's wasted anxiety. You can't, see what your references have said about you. Also, it's more a case to make sure that you can provide someone who will be able to say nice things about you. So as long as you have 2 references that are a decent length and have said good stuff, that's those boxes ticked. They're not going to examine those references and pull them apart and look for all the tiny detail. It's very much a tick those 2 boxes, right, now looks at the applicant and the individual and who they are. So they're 20% of your application, if that, probably nearer to 15. You know, we're much more interested in who you are as a person than what your references have to say about you. But, you know, ideally you want someone who can speak to your qualities academically and your interest in becoming a barrister.
Thank you. So the next question is regarding the paper sift application process that Lincolnsen and Grayson have got. So what is the criteria by which successful applicants are selected? And when looking at hundreds of applications, what makes certain applicants stand out more? And if any of the other panelists have any thoughts on this as well, please feel free to chime in.
So both Gray's and Lincoln's, we have our criteria on our websites, as do the other Inns of Court. When you're making your application, dependent on which inn you're applying for, do look at that criteria. Most of us have the same basic points that we kind of are looking for in scholars. At Lincoln's, we have 5 points that we look for. They are intellectual ability, confidence in people skills, motivation for the bar, integrity, and I think the last one is a high level of intelligent articulacy, which ironically is very difficult to say. And so when you make your application, think about those 5 points. Think, if need to be, before you put your application in, go through, write those down on a piece of paper and tick every time you've demonstrated them. Make sure that you've actually answered those criteria and shown that you meet those requirements in your application, whichever inn you're applying for. Because if you can identify where you've met those points, you're making it easier for the review panel as well. They don't want to have to go looking for it. They want to be able to see those qualities, make their lives easier. They're doing it for free. They're busy people. They want to be able to read and see, oh yeah, they've thought about how they demonstrate their integrity, which is probably the hardest thing to demonstrate in a paper application or even an interview. But think about, you know, times you've, you know, fulfilled a position of trust, times you've been responsible. Have you been a carer for anyone? Have you had a job where you've had to look after money? Like, think about the transferable skills you have. And don't be frightened to think outside the box either. We had one person approach me a few months ago saying, I'm thinking about making my application, but I'm really worried I don't have these skills and I don't have those skills. And they'd been captain of their rowing team at university. And it was like, well, that shows leadership, that shows responsibility, that shows X, Y, and Z. And they said, but it's not law related. It doesn't matter. It demonstrates who you are as a person. So, you know, it doesn't have to be all law all the time. You can, you know, put in different stuff as well. So yeah, everything else I think has generally been covered by the advice, so I won't bore you more with my wittering.
And just that final question for you, in terms of talking through the process of deciding who should be the recipient of an award once applications have been submitted, and specifically it'd be useful to talk about the COVID situation, if anything's changed since then, especially obviously with things being remote.
Yeah, so the basic process for Lincoln's is, once the application deadline is closed, the applications are sent off to an initial review panel and sifted through. We generally get approximately 300 applications a year, and we try to interview over 200 people. We don't have a set amount because we try to interview everyone we think is worth interviewing. So sometimes that can be 200 people, sometimes that can be 250. It varies year to year. And we generally award about 100 scholarships a year, slightly over. So you have about a 1 in 3 chance at Lincoln's of getting a scholarship. I think Gray's award about 83 scholarships a year, but they tend to be slightly higher monetary value. Middle and Inner, it is approximately 100 scholarships a year as well. And the number of applicants for them varies. So they tend to be between a 1 in 3 and a 1 in 4 chance of getting a scholarship, if I'm remembering their stats correctly, but they are also published on their website, so you can check those out. After we do our paper sift, you will get an invite to interview for Lincoln's. With Middle and Inner, obviously you will already know that you will be interviewed and the interview dates are already advertised. Lincoln's ordinarily we interview in Manchester, London and Birmingham. Obviously, in the current situation, it is incredibly unlikely that we will be doing any in-person interviews, especially in Manchester or London, and Birmingham actually isn't in the best of situations either, so it's almost out of the question entirely. So it's likely that those interviews will be online this year, and done remotely. At Lincoln's, we send you interview questions prior to the interview, so you have a little bit of time to prep and think about what your answers will be. Your panel will be 3 members of the Inn. We try to give you a panel who are from various stages of their career, so you won't be confronted with 3 QCs or 3 judges. You will likely have a chair of your panel who will be a bencher of the Inn, so a senior member of the Inn, potentially a judge, a QC, or sometimes retired. And you will then have 2 other barristers on that panel. They will ordinarily be former scholars as well. I believe at the other inns they try to get former scholars too to interview, so they'll have been through the process, same as you guys. Once the panel have interviewed you, interviews normally last between 15 and 20 minutes. Lincoln's tend to be slightly longer than some of the other inns, but on average it's 15 to 20 across the inns. At Lincoln's, the panel will make their decision. You are likely to be interviewed in February. You will then find out in March whether or not you have a scholarship. And then probably in April time, you will find out how much money you've actually received as part of your scholarship, because the means testing process takes a little bit of time. So you will be informed whether or not you have a scholarship and the name of your scholarship. And then once the means test has been completed, you will find out how much funding you will receive as part of that scholarship, because the means test can be quite a lengthy process. That's the basic process for you, what you should expect from Lincoln's at least. Remember that everyone is in the same boat as you. Everyone has lost opportunities because of COVID. My biggest advice is remember that you are not being judged on your other candidates, you are being judged on yourself. So don't go into the interview thinking someone else has more experience than me, someone else might have a better degree result than me, someone else has X, Y, and Z, because you don't know what your other candidates have. You only know what you have. So go in thinking, I have this degree result and I can, argue why that's good. I have this experience and I have a ton of enthusiasm that I can sure as hell argue about and let them know about. So don't go in already comparing yourself to some other candidates, because a good interview panel isn't comparing you directly to the other people they've seen. They're judging you on your own merit.
Thank you so much, Beth. Kendal, I've got a question for you regarding the application process for the BTC. Could you just talk about that briefly? I'm sure it interests our other panelists as well. I think you're muted.
Oh my gosh. So when I did it, it was the BPTC. I've literally just completed it recently. So I don't know if you saw, but there was a bit of an issue with the BSB exams, and it's been like all over the news and everything else. So I literally just had my last exam like a month ago. So I've just completed it, but I'm the last year to have the BPTC as it is now. So I don't know if the application process is different now, but when we applied through something called BARSAS, and it was kind of like UCAS, like you have for undergraduate degrees, but for bar school, essentially. It's a standardized application, actually quite similar to the scholarship application I found for Lincoln's. It's not too far off from that, and you kind of just send it through like a portal, and then a few weeks later you get an offer or a rejection. But I think like everyone gets it. I don't think they're like picky. you get an offer from the universities that you choose to apply to, and then you just choose the one you want to go to. You don't have an interview or anything like that. Well, not, at least I didn't. I don't know if the process has changed.
Just a quick update on that, just because I happen to know. Now all applications for the bar course have to be made directly to the bar course providers. There's no longer a universal portal. Just to know that.
Interesting. Yeah, so I was completely wrong.
So we've got one more question for all the panelists, mainly the scholars. So for when you were undertaking the GDL and the BT or the BTC, why and how did you choose the institution that you are studying at, and what is it like undertaking the GDL or the BTC?
So I chose it because, as I said before, I needed to buy a bit of time. I'm an August baby, and graduating straight away, going to GDL to bar course, it was too quick, and I couldn't develop those skills I wanted to develop. So for instance, mooting, I really wanted to work on that because I didn't do much of it in my history degree. And if I did the GDL, I know there'd be hardly any time to do it. Okay, but Sam is really struggling. He's about 2 weeks in. Also, location, I wanted to stay in London, and also Queen Mary is a Russell Group university. So whilst grades on everything and the institution isn't everything, I'm used to that level of teaching. I kind of want to continue it into my undergraduate degree. So for those who don't know, I'm doing the senior status course, so it's a 2-year LLB rather than the 1-year GDL. Also, I'm actually finding it really, really hard. So this term I've got about 6 modules. It's it's really, really hard balancing extracurriculars and everything going on at the same time. So for instance, on the 6th of November, I have the bar course scholarship application, 3 formatives and a qualifying session. So no one talk to me on the 6th of November. I'm going to be struggling. I also, to kind of echo what Kendal mentioned earlier, so even though I say grades on everything, they are really important. And I felt that my history degree didn't really show the way I understand content and deal with it and develop on it. So with the law degree, it kind of gave me a chance to concentrate on the modules I wanted to concentrate on without it being too heavily saturated like the GDL, but also just to pick modules that I really like. So I have an interest in personal injury and environment law, as well as planning and contract litigation, and that this course allowed me to kind of develop on those skills. So I don't know if the GDL does international environment law, but Queen Mary does. So that was another deciding factor for me, and to sort of hone in on that experience and those modules. I've also heard about like my friends who do the GDL. They said it was really, really, really hard. As kind of echoed before, they really struggled with it, and I kind of didn't want to echo that into my own degree. And it was also just to broaden my horizon. So for instance, for its first year was about 4.5 modules, 5 modules. So I got to sort of do minis, work on teaching experience, also develop more relationship with barristers and sets, so I can do more work. I can also be the president of the Bar Society. No chance I'd be doing that if I was doing the GDL, 0. So that's made me pick this course.
So I did the GDL at City University. The reason as to why I did it at City is because it's the most rigorous GDL provider. And I just wanted that extra clout on my applications. 2 months off of first for the undergrad, still very salty, but I wanted to make sure I blew it out the park for the GDL. It is not an easy course. And I'm not just trying to say that to make it like sound hyperbolic. It's literally one of the toughest courses, especially the way in which City do it. So you do all your exams at the end. Just remember the trauma from GCSE, but now you're older. It's like one whole spat at the end. I could say by God's grace I blew it out the park, but only by God's grace. But it took a lot of energy and time. Sorry, forgive me, my neighbours are playing quite loud music. It took a lot of time to actually get and comprehensively understand 7 modules at one small period of time. But it did teach me what area of law that I'm very passionate about. So I thought initially I would just love public law, that's my niche, but on the GDL, I did very well in equity, for example, and I understand that I really like equity and EU law, for example. These are things that I didn't understand, but I think for the GDL, you have to be mentally and physically prepared to give up such a period of time of your life, and to make sure that you're always on the ball. Like, because your lecturers and your tutorial leaders, they simply, not to sound hyperbolic, but they don't care of your external circumstances. I had external circumstances that like, okay, get it together. So specifically during COVID. So just make sure that you know what you want to do. And if you're doing the GDL, make sure that you want to get a fantastic grade in it, especially if you didn't get the first, I would say.
I chose City as well for, as Anne-Marie said, basically every barrister I'd ever met had just been like, City is the most academically rigorous. And I don't even know if that's true, but if they're saying it's true and they're the ones that are going to be interviewing me, it's true. So I just was like, yeah, I want to go to the bar, so City's the one. And I am, I think, 5 weeks in now, and I go into reading week next week, and it cannot come soon enough. Doing all 7 modules at once, and then they're like, oh, by the way, you've got an English legal systems exam just thrown in there randomly, and then they're going, oh, and we've got the GDL moot, the senior moot, how about you come do some mooting training with 4 New Square? It's like, oh, I've got so much time, thank you, yes. So it is a lot, so be prepared for that. But I am enjoying it a lot more than I did at my undergrad, so I suppose that's a win.
So I don't really know why I chose BPP to do the BPTC. I think it was probably they have quite a good outreach program, and at Queen Mary specifically, there's a big BPP presence. They do a lot of events. They invite like first and second years to a lot of events at BPP, and you kind of see the plays and it's familiar. And I think it just came down to the fact that I'd never been to ULaw or City, and I didn't know anything about them. And I'd been to BPP like 5 times already. You know, I knew half of the tutors there, so obviously I was going to pick BPP. It wasn't really a question for me. In hindsight, I wish I would have maybe looked into it a little bit more, because I did end up regretting my decision for various reasons. And I was kind of halfway through the year thinking I should have gone to City. And I know for the GDL it is considered to be more academically rigorous, but it also is, I think, a little bit better for the BPTC as well. I mean, I'm only talking from personal experience here, and I don't know how things are going to change with the new courses, but this is just how I felt personally. I just wish I would have done a little bit more research before I just picked randomly, you know, the first institution that came to mind. Yeah, so my advice is to maybe look into it a little bit more, and kind of see what each institution offers and what makes it better than the other ones, and also ask people, because I think you can't really beat personal opinions, because, you know, when you've met someone who's been to a specific university, you kind of get the best advice from them. They're like, no, I can tell you from personal experience that this is not the place to go, and that's the best way to know where to go, I think. So yeah, just kind of research it first, but then also try, if you do know people that have been, I think just try and ask for personal opinions, because that's definitely the best way to judge where to go and where to choose.
Can I also add one point to the providers? I would say that the ethnic diversity at the GDL was absolute none. At City, that's one factor that did affect my mental health slightly in the first term. It was more non-racially diverse than King's, if you can believe that or not. So the university itself is very ethnically diverse, but when you walk into the GDL, you know you're in a different setting. The people who teach at the GDL are lecturers like Martin Dixon, who's basically like the godfather of land law. He's a lecturer at Cambridge, so you know that the level of teaching is basically like Russell Group, but it's in terms of ethnic diversity, class diversity, it wasn't there. So it did have a factor in. So I would just say, if that is an element for you, so I know someone who did their GDL at University of Law, and they have pupillage. You know, City are the best for GDL, but I think if you can do very well at another provider, make sure that the provider doesn't have such a toll on your mental health. And that's one element I would say to factor in.
So that's like the end of all the questions. I think Akash is going to close it. So, don't know. Yeah.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in tonight. It was a wonderful session. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for coming in and spending some of their valuable time with us. I'm sure all of us have learned a lot about scholarships tonight and are looking forward to apply. One second, sorry. I'm just getting us info about our next event. This Saturday, we are going to have the finals of Bar Fight. We'll let you know what the results are. Our next event is How to Network. It's on the 2nd of November. Please do tune in for that. It's going to be an amazing opportunity. Alexi will be there as well, teaching you guys how to network. Thank you so much for coming in. Hope you guys
Not
have
just
fun.
me, it's also I'm not the connoisseur at the bar just yet. It's mainly with Miss Ruth Reed, who's the founder of Kicking Council. So I'm just as like a chair, if you will. So she's going to kind of list how to network, because almost all of her sessions with us and Kings have been networking sessions. So we thought it'd be good to teach you how before the inclusion networking event next year. So it's not me, don't worry.
But anyways, thank you guys for coming in tonight. Hope you guys have an amazing evening. Thank you for all our panelists for coming in.
Thank you.